All right. I'm here with Rob Burman, special effects makeup artist for movies. I'm Michael Paul Norman. My, my channel is all about addiction. I've been an addict for my entire life, pretty much since I was a teenager.
I
Alcoholic.
think hasn't everybody?
What's that?
I think hasn't everybody?
Yeah, it's most people I know. But yeah, part of me getting sober is just kind of finding God and kind of trying to find a new direction in life and trying to just reach out to other people and find other people that have interesting lives and just to kind of spread the message of like, man, there's so many cool things out there that you can do if you don't get in your own way. There's so many interesting people and life is a blessing. It truly is. And it's just so cool that we get to be here and do all these different things. And you have such an interesting um, career. You make special effects for movies and makeup artists for movies. And I'm just curious to know more about you and how you got into that and kind of your road. You can ask me anything about addiction or anything about my life. But yeah, just definitely curious about Rob Burman and what got you down the path you're on.
Well, my family goes back, and I'll try and give you a quick version, but it's kind
Sure.
of long anyway. Um, my family started when my grandfather, my dad's father, brought his whole family to Hollywood to see if he could make a go at it back in the late 1930s. He had done monuments and huge sculptures all over the world, or all over Nebraska and things like that. A war memorial and things, which at the time was just called the War Memorial, not like it didn't mention World War One, World War Two, and all of that, because at the time there wasn't a World War Two, so they were just the World Wars, at the time. Um, so he did these memorials, one for the American Indians and things. And then he moved to Hollywood trying to see if he could make a go at it. He started making props and scenic art and things like that for different companies, and especially like the prop rental companies that would, rent to the studios and whatnot. So he got a job to make the handle for a walking stick or a cane made of silver that is called the wolf's head cane, and it was the cane that they used to beat the Wolfman to death in the original The Wolfman.
Oh,
So when he was on that, he met Jack Pierce, who did the Wolfman makeup, and he Jack told my uncle or told my grandfather. He said, "Well, you sculpt and you mold and all those kinds of things and cast parts and whatnot, work in rubber. I only do makeup on people. I glue stuff on them and try to make them the character. And that's how we did Frankenstein and the Mummy and the initial Wolfman, things
yeah.
like that. So he he decided that my grandfather would be a great asset to him if he had my grandfather making rubber masks, prosthetics, things like that. So all of the sequels and all the movies that Jack Pierce did after that, where things were sculpted and molded and cast and whatnot, my grandfather did those things for the sequels to the Wolfman and the Mummy movies and the Frankensteins and all of those things after the originals. Um, so my father, who was growing up at the time, would be in school and things like that. But in summer vacation, he was asked to help my grandfather in his lab, and he learned about how to make molds for rubber guns, rubber knives, and fake food, and all these different things. My father had some experience doing that kind of thing. So at one point, he was helping my grandfather do a giant King Kong sculpture for the Don Post Studios. And when he was there, he heard about an apprenticeship program going on at 20th Century Fox. So he said, "Well, okay," and he took the afternoon off and went down there immediately and interviewed for the job and or interviewed for it. And out of 100 applicants, only 3 people were chosen, and my dad was one of them because he had experience working in a lab, knowing what to do. The makeup lab back then still made their own noses and all that stuff for the studios. So my father was brought in to help out on that. within like the first 6 months of being there, he he saw that they came in with a script, and Ben Nye Senior, who was the head of the department's like, "This is a big deal. This is going to be something else. We've got to get all the best people in the industry. Who can we get? Let's get the guys that did the list of Adrian Messenger." They said, "Well, that was the Westmores." And my father spoke up and said, "Well, John Chambers did all the lab work for them and did all of the behind the scenes aspects there." And they said, "Well, do you know how to get a hold of him?" I said, "Well, sure." So they called in John Chambers, and John went in and met with Ben Nye Sr. And he came out and looked at my dad and said, "We're going to win an Oscar, boy." And back then there was no Oscars for makeup. Um, and so my dad and John started on like a 4 foot by 8 foot table, the entire Planet of the Apes franchise.
Wow.
So, late 1960s, here we are making, hundreds of apes for the movies and stuff like that. It did win an Oscar. Um, and my dad was pretty much John Chambers' right hand man through the whole deal. Um, then, uh, uh, then after that show and my father's apprenticeship was ending, John and my dad decided, let's go start our own studio away from the studio lots. And people said, "You're crazy. Nobody works if you're not working at the studio. What are you going to do? Who's going to hire you?" What they didn't know is that John had a contract with the CIA doing disguise makeups and teaching agents how to do the work and all of that. So
Wow.
they couldn't do that at the studios because they would be found out, and so they had to keep it secret. So they started their own lab. After a couple of years, John left the studio to retire, pretty much semi-retirement because he kept the CIA contract. And my dad and my uncle kept the thing going and called it the Burman's Studio. And they did like the first radio servos inside a creature suit and all these things for the first time, all these characters and whatnot that nobody had ever done before. And so here I come, 16, 17 years old and looking for work and everything. I tried being a night janitor and that sucked. And, I tried being a dishwasher and it sucked even more. So, so I went back to my dad and said, "Hey, my best friend Dale and I would come and clean your shop every night or, 3 nights a week and stuff until so that when you came in every day, it would be nice and neat and tidy and you guys could start fresh." And he said, "That'd be great." So we started cleaning everything at night. And, the next day I'd be in school and going back to high school and whatnot. Then there'd be a note brought into class saying, "Rob Burman, please go to the office." And we're like, what did I do? So I would go into the office and they'd say, "There's a phone call for you. It's your dad." I'd pick up the phone and I'd say, "Well, what do you need?" And you say, "Well, where'd you put this? Where'd you put that? Where's this thing? Where's that thing? We need to do this." And I'd be like, "Well, it's here, it's there. I never saw it," or, that kind of thing. And he'd say, "Come in after school." And I'd be like, "Well, I was going to go hiking after." "No, I need you after school." So I started coming in every day after school, cleaning, sorting, stocking, doing all of the background work, what I call a Karate Kid training thing. Wax on, wax off, taught me how to do what I had to do, learned the materials, what they did, what they were used for, how to clean them up, all of that stuff. I learned all that background. So, in a matter of a couple of years, I was kind of the foreman of the shop because I was the only one that knew where everything was. I was the only one who knew how everything ran. And, my best friend the next year would come in after school because I was a year ahead of him. And so anything I learned in the morning, I had to teach him in the afternoon. So I learned how to teach people and show the work. Anytime new employees would come into the shop, I'd have to show them the ropes and how to do things. And you know, we did Happy Birthday to Me, My Bloody Valentine. We did The Beast Within, and then Cat People. And then my dad wanted a vacation, so he laid me off for a while. Um, a week later, my dad gets a call from his friend Kenny Diaz, who's working on the show, and Kenny said, "Well, we need some foam runners, and people who do foam makeup." And I thought, well, and my dad said, "Well, take my kid. He does that for me now, so use him. I'm not using him now. Okay, so I went in and interviewed for this guy, Eric Jensen. We talked, and he's like, "Oh, you know how to run big amounts of foam?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we've done some pretty big amounts of foam, and in one bowl like this kind of thing, a kitchen mix master kind of deal." And like, okay, we should be able to handle that. And so Dale and I went into the foam room and saw three big 20-quart mixers, and I'm like, oh my, you mean big amounts of foam. Okay, well, we'll figure that out. And it turned out that job was the thing for Rob Bottin and John Carpenter. So,
Wow.
we
What
did all the foam latex, anything cast out of rubber out of that show, we did.
can you explain the foam for a minute? I'm not really sure what that means.
Foam latex is a process where you take regular rubber and you put it in a mixer and you add different components, a foaming agent, a curing agent, a gelling agent. You add all these different things. You froth it up and foam it up to make a soft, movable latex, like a sponge,
Okay.
like makeup sponges and whatnot. Well, that would get injected into molds and molds of the sculptures of the different thing characters or any prosthetics or anything like that. So, so that then they'd take those and paint them and glue them on people or make puppets out of them or whatever it was going to be. On the thing, it was mostly puppets and whatnot, big giant body castings and things like that. So, uh, um, so basically, yeah, anything made out of a soft foam rubber that moved and did all the things that it did was latex.
Mhm.
Was the foam latex that came through Dale and my department. Um, After I finished that job, I'm like, well, maybe I'll do this for a living. I hadn't really decided at that point. I was just the cleanup guy and the stocking guy and all that at first, but so I started learning more about sculpting and I got more into mold making and whatnot like that after that. So we almost immediately after the thing, I got back in my dad's shop. We did Halloween 3. So we did that, and it would move on to different shows, and because I was known as the foam guy, um, Dale and I were brought on to do Ghostbusters, and then I was brought on to do The Fly, and
Wow.
all these different movies that required foam latex casting. I got a job on. Created its own department, and before then, it was like anybody who had an extra hand would do it, but at that time that's what I was doing, created the department and became known for that. I then became known for mold making and doing that. I worked on all kinds of things, Batman Returns and eventually Super Mario Brothers movie. We did in Koopa making the transformation puppets in the end of that.
I
Um,
remember that. I remember watching that when I was a kid.
yeah, well, the two end ones where it morphed back and forth through bad CGI and cool looking puppets, we did all the puppets. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so shortly after that, I started dating who's now my wife, and we got involved together. The year we got married, we did scenic props, things for the art department to put on set, baskets and all kinds of stuff for the movie Waterworld. That same year, we also did the Power Rangers costumes for the first movie.
Wow.
So, they had to look like sleek, clean Ferraris. And
Yeah,
so, well, we made them look like Ferraris.
yeah,
Um,
that's my childhood right there. Like, I
yeah.
remember all this stuff. Yeah.
All that time I was teaching people and showing people how to do it. All my friends who wanted jobs, I'm like, come work for me. I'll show you how to do this and you can do that. Some of the best people in the world now are. My friend Bud McGrew is one of the great. He was known as the head mechanizer. He would do all of the mechanics for heads for things like Goro in Mortal Kombat. He worked for Stan Winston on the film AI and made the Teddy puppet, the thing that goes around is like his sidekick for the movie. So, lots of people went out and had great careers and did all that. And I decided, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a makeup on set by 7:30 and things like that is a lot of work and all of that. Well, maybe I should go into teaching. So around 2009, I started teaching people, and and that was so much fun. That's all I really want to do anymore. Actually, all I really want to do is sculpt anymore. But to make a living, I'll also teach and educate people. Come to my lab, which is a functioning, working makeup effects lab, and learn the craft. You
Where's
know,
your lab located?
I'm in Tahunga here in Los Angeles. I'm just outside of Los Angeles on the edge near the forest. So it's a nice casual place. It's at my home, so you know, we 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 have access to it whenever we want to, and it's a great experience. I really really love that. I've got a lot of people out now that have come out of my courses that, again, are very successful, have careers in makeup and makeup effects, and some people say, "Ah, the rubber monster era is dead," and makeups are going by way of CGI and things like that. Well, not the evidence I've seen. The amount of people I've taught and the amount of work that they've been doing and all that stuff. Um, it's still prevalent. It's still something that people do a lot of, and
Mhm.
I think there are careers to be made.
Well, it's really interesting what you said about the CIA. I had never even thought of that. Like that.
Did you see the movie Argo?
Yeah.
Ben Affleck directed. It's about getting the hostages out of Iran during the Iran hostage crisis and all. Um, my dad was helping to train the agents that went in and did that.
Wow.
You know, I didn't know it at all until I was watching an episode of on Discovery Channel of the CIA in Hollywood, and all of a sudden they're interviewing my dad, and he's talking about how they were training agents, and how one of these guys that I considered a great guy, one of my dad's best friends and stuff like that, came to him initially to be a CIA agent, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Wow.
What I mean, I was 14, 15. My dad didn't tell me anything about that because it was all top secret. 20 years later, he was able to talk about it on this show, but it was like, uh, what? It was amazing to me.
Was he still alive when you saw that episode? Like, were you able to talk to him?
Yeah, he's still alive now. I still talk to him. The in the movie, alongside the head CIA agent, was this guy John Chambers, who was my dad's mentor, who worked on Planet of the Apes with him, and they did all the stuff together.
Mhm.
So John Goodman played that character, and it was like, oh my God, I knew that guy. Just it was strange as hell to me.
Yeah, it's such a. I remember the first time I saw a famous person. I live in California, but I grew up in Northern California in Redding,
Oh,
and now
okay.
I live in San Mateo, just outside San Francisco. Um, and
Also love San Mateo.
what's that?
I also love San Mateo. I love when I worked on The Fly, we were in San Rafael, so I got
Oh
to know the
yeah,
whole area pretty well.
yeah,
Lived in Santa Rosa, worked in San Rafael,
yeah,
spent every weekend in San Francisco. So
yeah. San Rafael is beautiful. But it's funny. Like when you meet a famous person, you go, "Oh, these are just people." Like they, it seems so far away when I was at home watching on TV, and they seemed
sure.
like bigger than life characters, and you almost like thought they were that character in real life, and then you meet somebody that's um, been on TV or I've never met anybody super famous, but like Jerry Rice, I work in a hospital kitchen, and Jerry Rice will come in occasionally because they take his mom there, and just seeing them in real life and just being, oh, this is just a person. Like this is just they're just doing their day to day job. They just happen to be in this field that's like interesting, but yeah, I don't know. It's just so interesting that like as you get older, you go. It's kind of like the first time you see your parents as just people. Like
Right.
they're not. They don't know everything. They're just figuring it out too. And they.
I always saw that I mean, even though I was around the industry, when I was watching shows on TV and whatnot, I always wondered, it's like, oh, I bet somebody had to make that, and all these different things that I didn't really connect. I grew up very Brady Bunch
Mhm.
kind of thing, very kind of normal, average, everyday kind of place. So those people were interesting to me, and I looked up to them. It's like, wow, that guy Robin Williams is really funny. Funny. I wonder what he's like, and that kind of stuff. And then eventually, sometime as a kid, I'd be brought around, and when my father was brought in to prototype things for the movie Popeye, got to be there when they live cast Robin Williams.
Wow.
When I was younger. I'd be running around on set. My dad would take me to work because my mom wasn't available. So me and my brother would go with my dad and hang out with him on set. And it's like, oh, he'd be making up this guy, and I'd be talking to him, and he's very friendly and all that. And then I go home that night, and I'd be watching the TV show Star Trek. I'm like, hey, that's that guy. That Kirk guy is that guy I met today. You know,
You met
no connection whatsoever, but they were all just people. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in a very small town, but my parents had a restaurant growing up. My parents were always small business owners and ran
sure.
their businesses. And when I was in high school, they bought a video rental store, and
Mhm.
we ended up and I ended up working there all through high school. So I've been very tied to the you know movie industry, and I wanted to be an actor, and I just was so fascinated by storytelling and movies. To this day I am. And eventually video stores went under. But I, I think a lot of my addiction comes from like a lack of expression, just never finding, like I was just always athletic, always like wanting to do something artistic that had meaning. But I was always working in kitchens and always working like, you know, just factory jobs and like jobs that just weren't even any kind of expression, it's just work. And I wanted to be a
Just
professional.
about bringing in money. The same way I started in the industry. All I wanted to, I saw my friends making money.
Yeah.
As busboys and baggers at the grocery market and things like that. And I thought, they're making money. I need money too. I need to do something. So that's why I started as a janitor. I started as a dishwasher because I had no real, direction. It wasn't like my family said, "You're going to grow up and be in the family business." I was like,
Yeah.
they're going to go, you can be anything you want to be," which was the equivalent of kinda no help at all.
I'm so glad you said that, because I get told that too a lot growing up. Do
Right.
whatever you want to do, but that doesn't really help you. Like that is
It
just
doesn't make
I
me
get told
think,
that.
"God, I gotta learn to do this. I need to stay in school so I can get this and get that, so I can be a marine biologist," or, I they were just like, "Whatever you wanna do, you can do. Just choose something," and I'd be like, "Nothing?"
Yeah,
Like,
I always
life here, I don't need to do anything, but, and then my friends were starting to make money, and I thought, "Well, I need to make money too," and like I said in the opening, everybody has their form of addictions. Some people do it with drugs, some people do it with food, some people do it with sports. So there's all kinds of ways to be addicted and check out of the rest of life
Mhm.
with something that you're into. And I myself am addictive personality. Absolutely. If there's something that I like and I enjoy it, it's going to be really tough for me to give it up. But,
Mhm.
at the same time, um, you gotta make money to do those things. So, I became a little bit more addicted to wanting to make money
Yeah.
than I did the other things, and that helped a lot and got me, like I said, after the when I finished the thing, I realized, "Well, I guess this is what I'm gonna do." you
Mm.
know? And after that, I started getting so into it that I wanted to know all the things that I did. I wanted to be the master of my craft. And,
Mhm.
I didn't want to just be a makeup artist, which is, I didn't want to just be a lab tech. I didn't want to just be this or that. Didn't want to just do makeup. Didn't want to just do puppets. I wanted it all. That addictive personality wanted everything. And the good thing is that I kind of became a jack of all trades. I won't say master of none because I mastered quite a few crafts in my time. I got good enough at that so that I could teach other people how to do it. And I've got a sort of a personality that can help you to learn and discover things without being like a taskmaster over ogre going, yeah, do this and do it that way, and just listen to me. And I'm like, no, hey, try this. Let's see what happens, and it allows for the discovery of the craft. And I
Yeah.
think that really helped a lot.
Is it hard, like what has your experience been working with like directors and producers, and kind of them just wanting, they're thinking budget, they're thinking time, where you're thinking art. Is
Well, the
that
director's always thinking the artistic, what he wants to see, what his vision is. So every time I get on a project, the first thing I do is I want to meet with the director and find out what does he want to see? What does this shot look like to him? Because then I can go back and I can give them an accurate budget of what we do. But production never wants to give you that information. They're just like, what's it going to cost to make this monster? What does the monster do? What does it look like? Has it got hair? Has it got scales? Has it got horns? Everything that you want to put on this thing changes the budget. And if you want an accurate budget and you're not going to give me any information, then I'm going to give you a huge budget because I have ideas that I want to see. I'm going to budget it the way I want to see that monster
mm,
you know. Um, Sometimes they go for it. Mostly they go, oh, well, we don't have that kind of money. We have, I'll go, okay, let me talk with the director and let's see what we can do. And we'll build shot for shot what you need rather than trying to make one thing do everything,
mm,
you know. Production production hems and haws about that and everything. The director loves you because you're giving him what he wants, and the if what the director wants is too expensive, then the production has to talk to the director and say, well, no, you're only going to get this time. You
mm.
know, so it's always a collaborative effort to make sure that everybody is getting what they want and everybody is happy.
Now, do you hire your own help, or is there like when they come to you, are you like a third party that they contract out, or are you actually like part of the whole
It
trans?
depends on my position on the show, you know. If I'm the department head, yeah, I bring in all my own people. I do everything that
Mm,
I'm gonna. I give them a budget for my overhead, my labor, my materials, all of that stuff because it's a bunch of people's labor. If they've got 8 weeks to do a job, and I say that in man hours it's 32 weeks. Well, I know I need 4 people to
mm,
do it in the 8 weeks. I break it down and I need 4 other well, but then the labor costs jump up and all of that. So, doing it faster doesn't mean it's cheaper. It actually usually means it's more expensive.
mm.
So, it's interesting. I've had jobs where they contact me 3 months before a commercial shoot, and we talk about it, and we decide all these things and all that, and then by the time they've cast the role of who they want to use and got themselves set up, I've got 11 days.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
done that before. Lots of commercials are like that. 4 days, 5 days, 2 days. Overnight. When it's overnight, that's why I started my company. I started another company called Rubberware that provides foam latex prosthetics that you can buy at any of the major makeup suppliers. I wholesale it to them and then they sell it to the public. Where if somebody needs a pig nose tomorrow for a sitcom, they can go to the beauty supply place that we sell at and buy a pig nose and they'll have it ready for tomorrow. But before then it was, we get a call, we need something for tomorrow. I'd be like, that's a week's worth of work. I can't do that for tomorrow. Sometimes we could and we would perform miracles and all of that, but usually it's not that way. So we tried to make it easier for people like me to be able to get their product. So Rubberware is available at about 40 retailers around the world right now. So anybody that needs it anywhere they need it, even online, you can get it.
Awesome. I'll put those links in the description. Tell me more about your like teaching. How long is your program and like um
I've set it up based on what people are going to need and what people want to learn and everything. I do a 1 week class. I do a couple of 1 week classes. One of them is how to just do a general prosthetic, usually a nose or a cheek or some forehead, maybe, something that fits right in this area because there's not enough time to make it more than that. So it's a 5-day course on life casting, sculpting, molding, casting the rubber, applying the piece and having a finished makeup at the end of the week. I do another 1 week that's just to make certain kinds of molds, one
mm,
for masks, one for what are called matrix molds. They're rubber molds for making duplicates of things.
Mm.
You know, if I want to make a guy's head, I do his life cast and I cast his head. But let's say I need 10 of his heads. Well, now I can make another mold that I can make 10 of them out of. And then I have a 2-week course that's like the 1-week course, but it's more involved. We get into silicone prosthetics. We get into multiple pieces so that they overlap and puzzle piece together and whatnot. And then I do a 4-week, which is sort of my boot camp for foam latex. It's you come in and you do a full head cast from probably here up, and you do a full head creature makeup, the whole deal.
Wow.
But it's a ball buster. It's 4 weeks of come on, you got to get going, you got to move, if I can only spend 3 days on maybe 4 days on sculpting, and you've never sculpted before, it's a challenge,
Yeah.
which is why I call it a boot camp, and it kicks people's butt. The first week, I'll ask my students, "So what did you do last night?" "Oh, we went out and we did this and we did that and all that." Okay. By the second week, it's like, well, we did a little bit, but mostly we're going home. And then by the third week, I'm like, "Well, so what'd you do last night?" I said, "I went home and I went to bed," because it's just even my more youthful students, it kicks their ass.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Growing up after the video store, my dad also started a comic book store.
Ah,
I had very interesting parents. They did a lot.
I like them already.
Yeah. And so I grew up. I also where after the video store, I worked at the comic book store, and he had like it was a collectible store, so it was comics and like swords and knives and all the things you see at a typical comic book store. But I got so used to it that I didn't appreciate it at the time.
Right.
Just what my parents did. Everybody thought it was cool, but I was just like, yeah, it's whatever. I've been there a million times. It's not, and like,
My God, you get to work there every day?
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
"Yeah, yeah, it's what I do. It's a living." Like,
it's a
my
living.
God, I would just dream to do.
Yeah, and as I got older, my dad's since passed, but it's interesting, like to as an adult to be like, man, that is such an interesting like field that my parents did. Did you have some of that with your family business of like it's just what it is, and then as you get older, you kind of go like, wow, this is pretty unique journey our family's been on.
Most people grow up, and if they want to be an artist, they want to be makeup, they want to be sculptors, whatever they want to do, and their parents are like, "You're never going to make a living being an artist. That's never going to happen. You're crazy." Blah blah. And I'm like, "Well, I really want to do it," and things like that. And I never got that. I grew up in a family who was like, "Oh, you be an artist? Okay, be an artist."
So
Because my family were artists. My grandfather doing all the props, all of his kids helped him make dummies and, like I said, rubber guns, rubber knives, fake food, all that kind of stuff. So, they all saw it as, well, sure, that's a way you can make money. I didn't get the negative aspects to it.
that's
I
so
also didn't get well, this is how you do it.
mm,
They just said, well, just do it. Oh, okay. So it was all trial and error and trial by fire. I just stepped in and did it, and luckily I was successful at it and kept doing it.
yeah, that's because when I grew up, it's you have to go to college. Everything else is just like a hobby. Like I wanted to be a professional skateboarder. I wanted to make skate videos. I wanted to do like editing, or like music or stand-up comedy. Those are the things that
Oh,
I'm.
I'd love to be a comic.
Uh, yeah, I obsess. I'm like you. I'm an addict. I'm a very addictive personality, but I can't control my addiction. I can't focus it on something I don't care about. I can
Well,
only,
yeah, true. Because that's not an addiction. That's work. It's effort. It's something that's like I don't want to do that.
yeah. So like, it's kind of as I go in my sobriety journey, it's me. I talk to other addicts about it. It's kind of a superpower like that we have. Um, but I think it's so important for people that are struggling to find that outlet and really go after it. And one of the hardest things is with family. Like they don't really understand. Some people are meant to
Yep,
be,
all this resistance of, "Really? You sure you wanna do that?
yeah,
Really?"
fear, they're, which is understandable, like fear that you're gonna be nothing, and
They're trying to share their experience of what it was like for them. So, and they didn't have the same drive and same commitments and same addictions that you did. So they're going to give you the benefit of the experience of their own personal experiences and addictions.
yeah,
So and that's all going to be kind of tainted through that look. And anything they don't understand, they will just dismiss.
yeah, yeah, and especially like, you know, unfortunately, and it's getting less and less because of things like YouTube and there being locations for movies and arts and stuff. But it used to be you had to live in LA to do any of this stuff.
Oh, sure.
And
When I was first coming up, everything they would fly me all over the world to do things. I'd spent, a whole entire summer in China doing a film. I've been to South Africa working on things. And, they flew me in various places to do various jobs. But here's the thing that happened. While we were there, they gave us people as assistants, production assistants, and things like that, who would help us out. Well, as they're helping us out, we had to teach them what to do and showed them the ropes and everything. So, once they got an idea of how to do the stuff to be able to help you, that was great. Well, 10 years later, now they've got 10 years experience doing it,
yeah,
and now they don't need to fly you there anymore. So
mm,
now it's like we trained the world how to do the work, and now the world doesn't need us anymore. So, we stay in LA.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. What's it been like? Like I know, I mean, there's just been so much evolution in the industry. How has that been for you dealing with that? And like, do you feel like do you feel like you need to keep up with the latest stuff, or is it more like I need to own this specific craft because there's going to be fewer people that do it? Just,
Yes and no
mm,
on both ends of the spectrum. The things that I do, for the most part, require live performance. If I'm gluing something to somebody's face, I have to make something physically. I have to be a mold maker and a sculptor. And, I have to do all the things that I do. Some of those things are being augmented through computer graphics, you
mm,
know. So, whereas I can do a head cast on somebody and have a plaster head ready to sculpt on by the end of the day, that's great. And most of my productions require that kind of speed. But now you can scan the guy with a digital scanner without even touching him. Just go around him and da 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 da, put it in a 3D printer and print out a copy of the guy's head.
wow, I didn't know you could do that.
It takes 2 or 3 days to print that head. So if I need it today to start sculpting, the computer graphics or the scanning is not the way to go. I can't do that fast.
Mm,
Um, So there is some catching up to do as far as the digital realm goes. A lot of whether it's 3D renderings in the computer entirely, even though they call it sculpting in ZBrush and things like that. To me, it's not physically sculpting. I know it acts like it, but it's not the same for me. Um, and so I never really bothered getting into that. A lot of my peers and things like that are doing that now, doing beautiful work and things like that. And they have the time and the money
mm,
because time is money. And if it's going to take me, if I can do a life cast in a day, I can do that within the hundreds, or if not, low thousands of dollars. Whereas a digital scan, I heard somebody recently says when he does a digital scan and a print for somebody, it's 10 grand. Like, well, okay, I still beat you in price and time. I can still do it faster. I can still do it as efficiently, but with my hands rather than, pushing buttons on the computer or a digital stylus or something. You
yeah,
know.
that's
So, but the processes and things that I do really haven't changed much in hundreds of years.
wow.
including going back even to the Renaissance with Michelangelo and things like that. They still did things the same way. You go to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, and they've got a whole section on replicas of famous works. Well, that means somebody went in and made a mold off of one of those things and then had to cast those parts and put it up. Whole church fronts, a statue of David, all these things that were replicated. And then, today we have silicone rubbers, flexible things. If you're casting parts and you need a hard thing like a ball, you can't make it out of a hard mold very easily because they lock up, they stick together. They won't, if you've got a ball like this and you've got a mold that goes like this, they don't come apart. You have to divide it absolutely perfect on the half point to be able to get this piece off and then another piece down here. And, to do a face at the Victorian Albert, they show a mold that's six separate plaster pieces because they didn't have the rubber that we use, the silicones we use now, to be able to cast it in one piece and then make as many as you need out of it. So I looked at that and realized that some of the replicas in that place had to have been thousands of parts of molds, not just statues, but like reliefs of pillars and all that with people coming out of them and spears and all. Thinking thousands, tens of thousands of molds to be able to replicate this back when they did. Well, yeah, now rubber makes it a little bit easier and whatnot, but understanding that molding process so that you can get things apart um, allows you to do so much more than what's available, or was available then. Um,
That's
Not
interesting.
much changes, but still more refinements of materials and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I never thought of that. That's so interesting. I've always wondered how they do this, these
With
big,
great difficulty.
yeah, it's so amazing.
Very labor intensive.
Uh, so do you have kids?
No, I'm
Okay.
the kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be 40 next month and I don't have any kids. I just have nephews.
Well,
Uh,
when I got married at 30, my wife was very clear that she did not want to have children. I'm like, okay, I'll probably talk you into it, but and then I got my first dog. That was my own personal pet, not the family dog.
mm,
And it turned out, I found out in a few weeks that he was stone deaf.
mm,
And having a deaf dog was very trying, very taxing. It was very difficult. We spent about a year and a half of having to be very kind of militant in our training with him and very specific. Because if you've got a deaf dog and he starts running after something, you can't call him back. He has to look at you in order for you to talk to him, you know? So, we taught him things like, "Don't go out the gate if it's open. Don't go in the door if it's open. Don't go out the door if it's open." All these different things. He always asked permission for everything he did, and when at a year and a half, it's like click, he turned on and became the best dog I've ever had. He was amazing. And that taught me, I don't know if I could raise a child.
mm,
You can you can lock the dog in his pen when you can't deal with him right now.
yeah.
But you can't do that with your kid. They grow up and write books, and I didn't need
Yep.
that. So I realized in about 40 years old that yeah, I don't think that kids are really on my list of things to do. And so I didn't have a chance to screw anybody else up other than my students.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I'm kind of dealing with now at my age. I have nothing, I've destroyed my life. And it's something I always wanted kids, but now as I get older, I see the value. I can see the value both ways, see the value in being an uncle. I can see the value in having
Yeah, I
pets.
got to be an uncle, so that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, what'd you say?
I got to be an uncle, so
Yeah.
that was cool. And, I
You should.
didn't. I could go. Oh yeah, okay. This kid's been fun here,
Yeah.
and hand it back.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just the value in having a partner, like a wife or something. I think, you know, that way you're not lonely. And I don't know. I think a lot of addicts think their life is over, and I thought mine was over. And I was 5150 and been in some mental institutions and stuff. And I remember thinking at the time my life was over, and I was like 30, like,
Right.
and I was like, I missed everything. I'll never have a chance to do anything else. Um, I'll never get married. I'll never have kids. Who would want me? And one thing I learned over many relapses and ups and downs over the years is it always gets better. It always does. Like it, as you get older, you still feel like you. So
Right.
like, it's not,
I'm
it's,
still 12.
yeah, 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 exactly. And like, there's so many other people that are older, like in their 40s too, that their lives have gone a certain way and maybe didn't work out how they thought, and they're single and they're looking for people. And
I don't think anybody's life turns out the way they think.
yeah, I don't either.
I had a thought. You said you're in your 40, right?
Yeah, I'll be 40 in like 3 weeks.
Okay. I had a realization at that age myself where I thought, the closer you are to your life's ambition, the easier midlife crisis is.
Yeah,
I don't think Tom Cruise had much of a midlife crisis.
yeah,
You know, I think the guy that, like you, who's struggling and having a difficult time, has the hardest time with it because you do think those things, guy, well, maybe I'm never going to be anything. Maybe this is not, and it's just not true. There is still, I mean, as long as you're on this side of the lawn, everything is possible, always is,
yeah,
you know. It just depends on the choices you make and where you go with them. And, I look back and I've got a basket full of regrets that I go, I really fucked this up. I did really messed myself and really missed this mistake. But if I'd done that, then I wouldn't have done this and this and this too. So, okay, yeah, I've got my regrets and whatnot, and I know that if there's an afterlife, I'll pay for them then. If that's the case, and I've resigned myself to knowing that that will happen if it does. I realized experience is all we get.
yeah,
And if there's an afterlife, well, that's a long time. There's a whole eternity of afterlife. Have as many experiences now as you can because you're not coming back to do it again, you know. And
yeah,
you want to have great stuff to talk about, great memories to have, and all that stuff in the afterlife. And if there's not an afterlife, well, then this experience is really all you're gonna get.
yeah,
So, do something with it. Make it happen and be the person you decide you want to be, not the person you think you should be, not the person you are expected to be, not any of that. Just be who you are and do what you do and make the best choices you can because I don't think anybody makes choices deciding, well, I'm going to make a terrible choice this time.
right.
You know, everybody's always thinking, well, this is the best choice I can make at this time, and I'm going to do the best thing that I can. May not be the right one, but it's the best one for you in the moment. And
Hmm.
that's what we do. We take the best choices we can make and do the best things that we can and hope for the best. And things turn out the way they're going to turn out, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Yeah, yeah, there's gratitude's big, good big thing for me. Gratitude over little things, and
Right?
just enjoying every day. And just,
And recognizing that is a powerful tool.
it is, yeah. And I see a lot of people that haven't recognized that are still
Right?
out, and it's like my life is in shambles, and I'm pretty happy. Like, you don't have.
There's a lot of people who say they're pretty happy, but they drink every day and they, and they do this or that, or I know one person who is on verge of dementia and Alzheimer's and things like that. And the one thing that the doctors have told her, they're like, you got to stop drinking and you've got to stop eating sugar. Those things are destroying you, you
Yeah,
know, and and as soon as she gets back, she goes right back to drinking and goes back into the sugar and all of that. And, you can't tell her to stop that. You can't tell her, no, people are going to do what they want to do, whether you like it or not. And, you know. It's hard, but there my father said something that really was profound to me, um, and I know there are exceptions to every rule, but there are no victims, only volunteers, you know? You you set yourself up for the things you set yourself up for because of the choices that you make.
Mm,
So what choices are you gonna make that are gonna be better next or do those kinds of things? And if you know that something is hurting you, um, being an addict makes you not really willing to stop.
mm,
But the choice is still yours. It still comes down to the choice you made. So there are people who have really hard times and don't get that they put themselves there.
yeah,
That realization is probably the most powerful one you'll ever have.
yeah, yeah. There's a big component of getting sober is, I went through AA, and it's personal responsibility. Personal
Right.
responsibility, delayed gratification, a lot of the things that you learn as a kid that you maybe forgot or never learned, and
Right.
how powerful that is. You
Well,
know.
when I was 45, I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, but I was a 2 beer a day drinker. I'd have 2 beers at the end of the day. Um, I smoked pot. I did all these things that were definitely not good for my health, especially by the time I'm hitting like 45, where my family has a history of heart disease. And when my grandfather was 45, he had a quadruple bypass. I mean, he was having a heart attack when he was in the doctor's office talking to the doctor and saying, "No, I'm fine." And it's like, no, and so I started having chest pains and things at 45 and thought, okay, this is bad. This is not good. So I got into the doctor and we had an angiogram and everything, and I had some blocked arteries and whatnot. He didn't do any surgery or anything, but he said, look, you're gonna eat like this and you're gonna exercise like this, and we're gonna fix you that way. And
Mm,
okay, well, I'll do that best. And when I got out of the hospital, I just went, no more. I stopped drinking. My the meds that I went on, if I drank, made me feel gross,
mm,
so I stopped drinking and things and cleaned my act up. And next thing you know, I'm still here 17, 18 years later and probably not gonna die soon.
yeah,
Whereas before, I was on that road,
yeah,
you know. So there's always a chance to become who you want to become.
yeah. How old are you now?
62.
You too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm kind of the same thing. We have heart disease. My dad died of a heart attack when he was 60. I was 30, and
Yeah,
that
65% of heart disease is hereditary.
yeah,
So, you know, and then the other 35% is what you do to it.
yeah,
Well, I can at least stop the 35%, can't I?
yeah. That's exactly how I feel. So, one of the blessings that came out of that, as hard as that was at the time, is like it was a good warning for me to clean up my health. And I didn't always do the best job of it, but I have always maintained like working out and never put on too much weight, and learn to eat healthy. And
Right,
you know I think you just have to, it's again goes back to the personal responsibility. I want to see what happens.
right.
I want to see.
That's the only fear I have of death is missing out on what happens afterward.
Yeah, me too. I just want to see what happens. Like,
Right.
on it, and I want to, my grandma's 94. uh,
Ah,
so there's hope there.
there is longevity in the family.
Yeah, there's both. there's there's early death, and then there's like really long life.
Both sides of my family are heart disease problems, and so I get the double whammy on that, and
Yeah.
it means that I have to watch it that much more closely. Most of my dad's side of the family all dies in their early 70s,
Mhm.
except my dad, who's now 84 this year, or going to be 85. I'm like, wow, and he didn't take care of himself until the last 20 years, where He had the fear of God put in him where, you're gonna be 6 feet under or you're gonna clean your act up.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Ah, cleaning my act up, what's that look like?"
Exactly. Yep. I think that's what happens is you get some close calls and you get some scares and you go, okay, God's telling me something, you know. Well, Rob, you're the man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Only somebody.
Um, yeah, I don't really have much else. It was great talking to you.
Sure.
I'll put all your links in the socials and people can contact you. And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my robbermanslaboratory.com is where all my classes are and
yeah,
things like that.
how is, it's so interesting because you do so many things that maybe don't ever get to be seen till there's a movie and nobody even knows that you did it. But now with like Instagram, you can post all the things you're working on, all those things
Right?
how has that been for you? Has that been rewarding or is that,
It's been a godsend actually because I was never a person that was good at finding work.
hmm,
I was never good at promoting myself well. I just did it, I just went from job to job and did what I could and everything, but I never really learned how to promote and whatnot. So, when I started the rubberware company for prosthetics and whatnot, it was like, well, how do I promote this stuff? How do I let people know that it exists? I mean, like you can only put so many ads in magazines, and that's very expensive and all that, and you really rarely see any big results from it or anything. So, you know, um, the advent of Instagram and Facebook and just the web in general, being able to set up my websites for Rob Berman's Laboratory and my effects company. Anybody wants to see that is Sticks and Stones Effects .com, and that gives you much more of the things that I've worked on that people would know about. But if you go to robbermansculpture.com, it's all my personal artwork and things that I've done that nobody gets to see unless you go to a gallery. I've got a couple of galleries that sell my pieces and whatnot. But and then every day on Instagram, I post to my 3 different pages. My Rob Berman's Laboratory pages, my Rubberware page. I post a picture in each of those. Those get shared to Facebook. Those on Facebook go to 2 or 3 different pages. So it keeps this right here in front of everybody's faces all the time. This and my work together. Um, I haven't done a big show or anything like that in, 10, 20 years now, that kind of thing. But um, not because I haven't been offered, but because I'm picky about what I'm willing to, put that much energy into. But social media has allowed me to stay relevant in
yeah.
the industry.
Hmm.
My Instagram page, my main one for Rob Berman's Lab, it's got like 48,000 followers.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
Really? It's
Yes.
not like I didn't artificially boost anything. I didn't pay to get them or anything like that. These are people that just see my posts, consistent posts,
Yep.
and posts that are interesting to see. I don't post pictures of food or my pets or occasionally there might be one day where I'll be like, "Oh, we lost this pet today. I'm sorry to say," that kind of thing, but that's extremely rare. Everything I post is my work and my classes and promotions like that, and people want to see it.
Yep.
So no more magazine ads, no more mailing out every. It used to be back in the day every Tuesday the Hollywood Reporter would come out with a list of all the new productions being done. So
Mm.
I would take that list and I would send resumes and postcards to all of those different companies. Never get a response. Nobody would ever call back. When I would, maybe 1 in 200 would call back and say, "Thank you, we're not looking for that." Wow, I got a response. Oh my gosh. But, they rarely, if ever, went anywhere. And now all the social media postings and stuff get responses. I get immediate feedback from all of that.
Yeah,
So definitely, I embraced that part of it pretty well. I'm kind
man.
of a social media whore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's truly amazing because I mean I didn't have it when I was growing up, and now it's just made everybody so much more accessible to each other, you know,
Right.
and you can grow together. You can find other. For me,